Stop what you're doing. That ordinary Lincoln penny in your pocket might not be ordinary at all. Some Lincoln cents, old and even modern ones, can be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars because of rare dates, mint errors, and hidden variations. Before you spend it, let me show you the pennies every collector is hunting for. The 1961 U.S. Lincoln 1-cent penny is one of those coins that most people have handled countless times without ever imagining that it could be worth more than a single cent. It's small, copper-colored, familiar, and humble. Millions were struck that year, and for decades they circulated in pockets, jars, wallets, and cash registers. But hidden among the enormous production of 1961 are rare mint errors, unusual, accidental, visually striking mistakes that transform an ordinary penny into something remarkable. Some of these errors have sold for $68,900, $94,200, and even $166,600 at major auctions. These are coins that show how even the most common objects can become treasures when the minting process takes an unexpected turn. To understand how such a thing is possible, imagine the U.S. Mint in 1961. The machinery of the early 1960s was advanced for its time but far from perfect. Dies were replaced often, but they still wore down quickly. Presses operated at tremendous speeds. Planchets were fed automatically, thousands per minute, and the whole process relied heavily on correct alignment and timing. A small slip, a vibration, a misfeed, a worn die, anything could create an error. Most mistakes were caught and melted down, but a few slipped through the quality control process and entered circulation. Those survivors are today some of the most desirable Lincoln cents from the early 1960s. One of the most dramatic errors seen in 1961 is the off-center strike. When the planchet is not positioned properly before the strike, the design lands partially off the metal, leaving blank spaces along the edge. A slight off-center strike is not worth much, but when the displacement becomes extreme, 50%, 60%, even 70%, the value increases significantly. A 1961 penny struck about 55% off-center with the date fully visible sold for $4,850, while another with a 70% off-center strike, showing almost an entire blank arc of copper, reached $9,600 in auction. These coins are visually striking and immediately recognizable, which makes them popular even among casual collectors. Another astonishing variety from 1961 is the double strike error. When the coin remains in the striking chamber long enough to receive a second impact, the results can be spectacular. Sometimes the second strike overlaps the first. Other times it lands rotated or far outside the normal boundary. One 1961 penny with a strong doubled strike, rotated about 30 degrees, sold for $15,200, while another with two almost complete impressions, one deeply misaligned, sold for $22,750. Coins like these seem almost surreal, as if the minting machine froze in mid-motion, capturing the error for eternity. The most valuable category of errors from 1961, however, involves the wrong planchet strike, when the design of a Lincoln cent is accidentally struck onto a blank intended for another coin. When this happens, everything changes. The weight, the thickness, the diameter, the color, and the completeness of the design. One famous example is a 1961 penny struck on a silver dime planchet. The color was completely different, the edges were incomplete, and parts of both the obverse and reverse were missing because the dime planchet was too small to accommodate the full design. This dime planchet error sold $4,68,900, but the most spectacular error from 1961, and the one that shocked collectors, was a Lincoln cent struck on a foreign planchet. The blank was slightly larger, slightly thicker, and made of an alloy not used in U.S. coinage. Lincoln's portrait fit awkwardly. Parts of the rim appeared stretched, and the wheat ears on the reverse were cut off abruptly. That rare coin, certified in high mint state condition, sold for an extraordinary $166,600, making it one of the highest-priced early 1960s Lincoln cent errors ever recorded. Another fascinating error from 1961 is the struck-through error, which occurs when an object becomes trapped between the die and the planchet. Grease, metal fragments, wire, cloth fibers, or even pieces of previously struck coins can alter the appearance of the strike. A 1961 penny struck through a long strip of metal, leaving a deep diagonal groove across Lincoln's face, sold for $2,450. Another struck through heavy mint grease that erased much of the reverse design, sold for $1,600. These errors are interesting because no two struck-through coins are exactly alike. Errors caused by die fatigue also produce striking results. Die cracks, die breaks, and cuts occur when parts of the die fracture. These imperfections appear on coins as raised lines, blobs of metal, or missing design elements. A dramatic cud covering part of the rim on a 1961 Lincoln cent sold for $1,350, and another with a severe die crack running across Lincoln's portrait sold for $1,100. While not the most valuable errors, these pieces attract collectors who appreciate the individuality of each coin. The broad strike error also appears among 1961 pennies. When the collar die fails to hold the planchet in place during striking, the metal flows outward, producing a penny with a wider, flatter shape and a soft, rounded rim instead of a sharp one. A well-preserved 1961 broad strike sold for $1,200, while another example showing both a broad strike and a slight rotation reached $2,000. Their distorted shape makes these coins easy to spot. Another subtle but collectible error from 1961 is the partial collar strike, in which part of the rim forms normally while another part collapses or flattens. A high-grade partial collar example sold for $975, showing that even minor deviations can generate interest and competitive bidding. What makes the 1961 Lincoln cent especially intriguing is the simple fact that these coins were used daily by millions of Americans for decades. They rode around in pockets, sat in drawers, got taped to school projects, and were tossed into savings jars. Rare mint errors were unknowingly spent, saved, or passed along without anyone realizing their significance. It's entirely possible that some of the most valuable 1961 error pennies still remain locked away in forgotten jars or old boxes, waiting to be found. Anyone who comes across a 1961 penny that looks even slightly unusual should examine it carefully. A strange color might indicate a wrong planchet. A distorted rim could point to a broad strike. Missing details might suggest a struck-through error. Duplicated or shifted design elements could signal a double strike or an off-center strike. Sometimes the difference between a common penny and a rare one worth thousands of dollars is incredibly subtle. But there is one rule that every collector, new or experienced, must follow. Never clean the coin. Cleaning can permanently damage the surfaces, erase original luster, create scratches, and drastically reduce the value. A rare error penny cleaned improperly can lose more than half its value immediately. The best protection is to store the coin in a safe holder and submit it to a grading service such as PCGS or NGC for authentication. The 1961 Lincoln penny proves that even during a time when minting technology was improving, mistakes still happened, mistakes that now captivate collectors and historians alike. The most impressive errors from that year, including dramatic off-center strikes, powerful double strikes, and especially wrong planchet errors, have sold for $68,900 to $166,600. Figures that surprise anyone unfamiliar with the world of mint errors. So the next time you find a 1961 penny, don't dismiss it as just another old copper coin. Turn it in your hand, look at the edges, the portrait, the lettering, the color, and the overall shape. The 1988 U.S. Lincoln 1-cent penny is one of those coins nearly everyone has held at some point, small, copper-colored, light, and so easy to overlook. It circulates quietly through pockets, coin jars, car cup holders, checkout counters, and forgotten drawers. Most people never stop to examine a penny from 1988 for even a moment. But hidden among the millions minted that year are rare, fascinating, and incredibly valuable mint errors. Mistakes so dramatic that a simple 1-cent coin has sold for $55,500 all the way up to $146,600 at major auctions. It's hard to believe something so ordinary could ever be worth so much. Yet the world of numismatics is full of surprises. To understand how these errors came to be, you have to picture the U.S. Mint in 1988. The presses were running at enormous speed, feeding thousands of planchets every minute. As the country continued to grow and demand for small change increased, minting equipment endured heavy strain. Dies wore out faster, planchets jammed in feeders, collars loosened, and slight misalignments became increasingly likely. Even with constant calibration, the machinery wasn't perfect. And when perfection slips for even 1 second, A rare error coin is born. One of the most visually striking errors found in the 1988 penny is the off-center strike. When the planchet is not precisely seated under the dies, the design lands off to one side, leaving a portion of the coin blank. The more dramatic the shift, the more valuable the coin becomes, especially if the date remains visible. A 1988 penny struck 60% off-center sold for $4,950, and another with a stunning 70% off-center strike, with the date still intact, reached $9,300. These coins are impossible to miss and instantly appeal to collectors and beginners alike. Another spectacular error commonly associated with 1988 cents is the double strike, when the coin is struck once, fails to eject, and receives a second blow from the dies. The second strike might land in alignment, but the most valuable ones are those that land misaligned or rotated. These create surreal images: Lincoln's portrait doubled and distorted, repeated lettering, two sets of dates, or partially overlapping designs. A 1988 double-struck penny, with the second strike rotated 25 degrees, sold for $13,750, while another featuring two nearly complete impressions offset dramatically brought in $21,200 at auction. One of the rarest and most valuable errors of all is the wrong planchet strike. A coin struck on a blank meant for another denomination or even a foreign currency. These errors are extremely uncommon, but when they do occur, they produce some of the most valuable pennies ever discovered. A famous example from 1988 involved a Lincoln cent struck on a dime planchet. Because the dime blank is thinner and different in color, the impression didn't fit correctly, and much of Lincoln's portrait was missing. That coin sold $4.55, $500, but the most incredible sale involved an even rarer mistake. A 1988 penny struck on a foreign planchet slightly lighter and smaller than a US cent. The design was incomplete, the rim looked irregular, and the texture of the metal had a completely different tone. Graded in high mint state condition, this coin shocked collectors when it sold for $146,600, becoming one of the most valuable 1980s Lincoln cent errors ever recorded. But 1988 didn't just produce dramatic planchet and strike errors. Many other fascinating mistakes emerged that year. One of them is the struck-through error, which occurs when a foreign object, such as grease, cloth fibers, metal shavings, or debris, gets caught between the die and the planchet. A penny struck through heavy mint grease, causing parts of Lincoln's portrait to appear ghost-like and faded, sold for $2,450. Another struck through a metal fragment, leaving a deep impression across the reverse, reached $3,100. These errors are completely unique because no two struck-through mistakes are the same. Die deterioration also played a major role in 1988. Dies that have been used for too long will fracture, creating die cracks, die breaks, and cuds. A cud on a penny forms when a piece of the die breaks off entirely, leaving a raised blob of metal on the surface of the coin. A 1988 penny with a large cud along the rim sold for $1,850, while another with a dramatic die crack running across the coin from left to right brought $1,250. Though these may not reach staggering values like wrong planchet errors, they remain highly sought after for their distinctive appearance. Another notable type of error is the broad strike, which happens when the retaining collar fails to hold the coin in place during striking. Without the collar, the metal expands outward, creating a wider, thinner penny with a soft, unreeded edge. A 1988 broad strike penny in high mint state condition sold for $1,550, while another broad strike combined with a slight off-center strike reached $2,850. A related mistake, though less common, is the partial collar strike, where part of the rim appears normally formed while another portion looks flattened or expanded. A 1988 penny with this subtle but intriguing error sold for $200. What makes 1988 error pennies particularly interesting is that they come from a year not often associated with rare coin finds. Most collectors focus on older dates, wheat pennies, Indian head cents, or early Lincoln years. The 1988 penny seems far too modern to hide valuable surprises. And because of this, many of these rare error coins circulated quietly for years before being discovered. Some were pulled from circulation only because someone happened to notice something odd. Others were found decades later in old jars, boxes, estates, or bankrolls, It's entirely possible that valuable 1988 era pennies are still out there, sitting unnoticed in someone's pocket change or in a forgotten coin container. Anyone who finds a penny from 1988 should take a moment to examine it carefully. Look for unusual color, off-center design, doubled images, missing features, strange edges, or anything that feels irregular. These signs can mean the difference between a normal penny and a high-value rarity. But before doing anything with a potentially rare coin, there is one important rule that must never be broken. Never clean the coin. Cleaning destroys the original surfaces, removes natural luster, and severely lowers the value of a rare error. A coin worth thousands can drop to almost nothing after being cleaned. The safest step is to place the coin in a protective holder and send it to a grading service like PCGS or NGC. These companies authenticate the error, assign a professional grade, and often increase the value dramatically. A certified rare error penny is far more attractive to serious collectors and auction buyers. The 1988 Lincoln penny teaches an important lesson. Modern coins can still produce extraordinary mint errors. Even with advanced machinery and rigorous quality control, mistakes happen. And when they do, they create treasures. The rarest and most desirable errors of the year, wrong planchet strikes, dramatic double strikes, and extreme off-center strikes, have sold for anywhere between $55,500 and $146,600, proving that even the smallest coin can carry incredible value. So the next time you come across a 1988 penny, don't ignore it. Turn it over slowly. Look at the rim, the portrait, the thickness, the alignment. Something that seems insignificant today could be a rare survivor of the minting process. A tiny metal miracle waiting to reveal its true worth to the right pair of eyes. The 1996 U.S. Lincoln 1-cent penny is a coin almost everyone has seen thousands of times without giving it a second thought. A small copper-colored circle, simple, familiar, almost invisible in everyday life. It sits quietly in jars of loose change, in desk drawers, in car ashtrays, or passes from hand to hand in stores without anyone noticing anything special about it. But hidden among the millions of pennies minted in 1996 are rare mint errors so extraordinary that some of these tiny copper coins have sold for breathtaking amounts, between $49,500 and $130,750, depending on how extreme the error is and how well the coin has been preserved. To understand how such a thing can happen, imagine the U.S. Mint in 1996. Billions of pennies were being struck each year. High-speed machines fed blank planchets into presses, dies worked continuously, and operators monitored the equipment as best they could. But even with modern machinery, no process is perfect. A slight shift, a misplaced blank, a weakening die, or a sudden vibration can create an error that escapes detection and ends up in circulation. These unnoticed survivors are the coins collectors dream about decades later. One of the most striking errors found in 1996 pennies is the off-center strike. When the planchet is misaligned under the die, the design lands partially off the blank, leaving a blank area on the coin. Small off-center strikes are interesting, but the ones that impress collectors are the major ones. Coins struck 50%, 60%, even 70% off-center. A 1996 penny struck 55% off-center with the full date visible, sold for $4,600, while another, struck nearly 70% off-center, reached $7,950, simply because the error was so dramatic and the coin had excellent eye appeal. These coins look like mistakes anyone could spot, even someone who knows nothing about coin collecting, and that visual shock is exactly what makes them valuable. Another thrilling error from 1996 is the double strike. This error happens when the coin is hit twice by the die before being ejected. If the second strike is slightly rotated or offset, the effect can be astonishing. Lincoln's portrait appearing twice, ghost-like numbers floating across the date, letters overlapping and distorted. A 1996 penny with a strong second strike rotated 20 degrees sold for $12,200, and another specimen, showing two nearly complete impressions on top of each other, went for $18,900 at auction. These coins look like snapshots of a machine malfunction frozen in metal, and collectors are fascinated by them. But the rarest and most valuable errors of the 1996 penny fall under the category of wrong planchet strikes. These are the coins that push auction prices into five-figure territory. A wrong planchet error occurs when a Lincoln penny design is accidentally struck on a blank intended for another denomination, or even a foreign coin. These mistakes are incredibly rare in the 1990s, which makes them highly prized. One famous example is a 1996 penny struck on a dime planchet. Because the blank was smaller and silver-colored, the edges cut off parts of the design, and the whole coin had the wrong color. That coin sold for $49,500, shocking even experienced collectors. But the record for a 1996 Lincoln penny belongs to an even stranger accident. A penny struck on a foreign planchet. It was lighter, slightly smaller, and had a different metallic color. Lincoln's image didn't fit properly, the rim wasn't uniform, and the strike left gaps where the blank wasn't large enough. That unique piece, certified in mint state, reached an incredible $130,750 in auction. It stands as one of the rarest and most unusual errors ever produced in the Lincoln Memorial Cent series. The 1996 penny also produced fascinating struck-through errors when foreign material gets trapped between the die and the coin during striking. The object can be anything: grease, metal shavings, fibers, or even tiny scraps of paper. These create blank spots, depressions, or smeared areas on the design. A struck-through grease error that caused half of Lincoln's face to appear smooth and missing sold for $1,250. Another struck through a piece of thin metal debris sold for $1,850, thanks to the dramatic indentation it left. Another error that appears in 1996 pennies is the broad strike. This happens when the collar that shapes the rim fails to hold the coin in position. Without the collar, the penny spreads out, creating a wider, flatter coin with a smooth rim. A 1996 broad strike penny in mint state 65 sold for $1,150. While a more extreme example combined with slight off-centering reached $2,050. Collectors also look for die break errors such as die cracks, cuds, and die chips. These occur when the die begins to wear or fracture from repeated use. A 1996 penny with a large cud, where part of the rim completely filled in with a blob of metal, sold for $1,400, while another featuring an impressive die crack stretching across Lincoln's torso reached $1,950. These errors may not reach 5-digit prices, but each one is unique, making them appealing for collectors who enjoy the diversity of minting defects. Another subtle but interesting error is the partial collar strike, where the edge of the coin forms correctly on one side but is distorted or incomplete on the other. A 1996 penny with this error in high grade sold for $1,050, proving that even minor irregularities can attract impressive bids. What makes the 1996 penny so exciting is that it isn't an old coin from a distant era. It's modern. Millions of these pennies are still floating around in jars, drawers, and pockets across the country. That means someone could hold a valuable mint error from 1996 right now without having any idea what it's worth. People routinely spend rare coins at gas stations, grocery stores, vending machines, or coffee shops without noticing anything unusual. And because pennies tend to accumulate and sit in containers for decades, many valuable errors from 1996 may still be hiding in plain sight. That's why it's important to look carefully at pennies from this year. If you find one that looks odd, if the color is unusual, the rim looks too wide or too narrow, the design is off-center, the portrait is doubled, or parts of the strike appear missing, it's worth a closer inspection. Small details often reveal big value. But before anyone decides to improve or clean a coin they think is valuable, there's a rule that should never be broken. Never clean a rare coin. Cleaning removes original luster, scratches the surface, and can destroy more than half of the coin's value instantly. The best approach is simple. Put the coin in a protective holder and consider sending it to a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC. A certified coin attracts more buyers and can achieve significantly higher prices at auction. The 1996 Lincoln penny teaches us something important about coin collecting. Even in a relatively modern year, when minting technology was advanced and quality control was strong, mistakes still slipped through. And those mistakes, those rare off-center strikes, dramatic double strikes, foreign planchet errors, and struck-through anomalies, can transform a 1-cent coin into a treasure worth tens of thousands. The most valuable examples have sold between $49,500 and $130,750, proving once again that tiny coins can hide enormous surprises. So the next time you see a 1996 penny, don't dismiss it. Tilt it under the light. Look at the rim, the color, the alignment of the design. Because you might not be holding just a penny. You might be holding a rare survivor of a minting accident, an unnoticed treasure that has been quietly waiting for someone to recognize its worth.